You can't touch your drum on your moon time, or people say like you can't smudge or can't go to ceremony.
I'm near the cook shack at Sundance because we'll have to throw all the meat away. Somebody here is bleeding, and that's why the Sundancers are falling over.
My cookum always told me not to step over men when I'm on my moon time.
And I was freaking just playing out in the snow, and he told me to come back inside because I'm not supposed to go out in the cold on my period either. The blood will go to my head and I'll die.
Gonna, cause a medicine man to keel over in a heart attack because we stepped over his pipe. They burned witches, they burned women, and they killed millions. They burnt them.
You're harmful because you're so powerful, get away.
I think it perpetuates that blaming of women and that pushing down of us as life givers to keep us in a place, because I think there's a fear of what will happen when we actually do become free and rise up. This world will be a better place. Moontime is a ceremony. It is the first ceremony. This ceremony happens with no objects. We don't need a smudge bowl, we don't need smudge, we don't need a fan, we don't need a feather. We need nothing. Because of the bodies that we are in, that have the life-giving power, that is a ceremony. It's the first ceremony. Every ceremony came after that and duplicates it in some way. So one of the most powerful teachings is to do not mix the ceremonies. So if we go in a sweat log when we're on our moon time, we're mixed up a ceremony. It would be no different than if somebody invited the Catholic priest to come and do communion in the middle of a Sundance. You wouldn't do that. It's two different ceremonies. So it is not because we're going to rot the meat or somebody's pipe's going to break or their power is going to be zapped because there's a woman there on her moon time. It's because you've mixed the ceremony. And so that teaching, that one, has been so misconstrued. What if we honored it and connected at that time and allowed our powers to come out? We're not going to harm anybody with those natural powers. We're just going to come into our power. And we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to stay quiet. We don't have to submit. We don't have to live under anyone's thumb. We can stand in that place of honor. We take it. We don't need to wait for someone to give it to us. We don't have to do dance. We don't have to pierce. We don't have to do any of those things. We don't have to create any deprivation, because it happens in and of itself because of these life-giving bodies. So we really are in ceremony. This ceremony just happens because of these bodies. And that's amazing if you think about it. Like, we are gifts. My name is Sheila. I am Self and mixed or self-Métis from the Lower Similkameen in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. I am a member of the Lower Similkameen Indian Band. There's 8 bands in my nation, and they extend right down across the invisible border, which is the United States. I went to school over 50 years old, by the way, and got a master's, and I'm also a clinical therapist based in trauma. I'm Two-Spirit, and I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother, and I'm a moontime teacher. I did experience, the harsh things that happens because of being in a biological female body. Like, my sex is I have a vagina, I have a womb. That's my sex. And because of that, things happened as they do. And I've had all of those experiences. I had 4 babies before I was 21. And, I went down various paths out of the hurt of not being raised in my family, and trying to find out who I am, where do I belong, where's my place. And this, I landed in our traditional ways, in seeking and learning, and the right people have showed up. I've had an elder recognize me as I began to try to learn what was our spirituality. And so I've been with that same elder since the very early 90s. So I did experience my great-grandmother, who was also known as a medicine woman. She practiced ceremonies, and I was exposed to some of the ceremonies and listening to her speak the language when I was really little. And even after being taken into foster homes, when I went on my rough road, I'll call it my rough road, and then found myself on Red Road, back to the spirituality of my people, my ancestors, I started to remember through blood memory. Ancestors knew that. They transmitted stuff to us. That's why we have sacred places. The rocks, the oldest nation is the rocks. It's the mineral nation. Great ceremonies happened around where there's rocks, Stonehenge, all kinds of places. And they, every ceremony that happened around rocks, those rocks absorbed the energy, they absorbed the sound. And when you think of it, every recording device is made from the minerals and rocks. So didn't the ancestors know a thing or two about a thing or two? It's in the rocks. It's in the transmission. Australian people, they talk about walkabouts. And it's because the elders go on a walk and they transmit knowledge into certain places. And then their grandchildren follow that path. And they stop at those places, and that knowledge that was left there is transmitted into them. Our ancestors did the same thing. They were running so hard for their lives, so fast sometimes, they didn't have time to pass things on. But I have heard that some transmitted knowledge into like the base of trees. You can go like on the island there where you find a huge cedar tree. Some of those cedar trees hold transmitted knowledge. You can sit at them and just let yourself go into the tree, and things might come out. You might, if it's yours, it'll be there. And you will know things. Once we open those doors, we have access to the ancestors. We have access to the spirit world. My experience of blood memory became really early in my recovery time when I came off Black Road. I had been around meeting rooms of healing for about 6 months, and I had heard about a spiritual connection or awareness, and so I was seeking that. And I remembered my great-grandma, and that, I'm Indigenous. I need to follow that way because I didn't like Christian ways. And I found a circle. It was called Indian Homemakers. It was a group in Vancouver of women. So I went to one of their meetings, and we sat in a circle. They lit a smudge, and I hadn't smelt that, that I knew anyway. So they did the smudge, and they were passing the feather around, introducing themselves. I had been used to introducing myself. Hi, my name is Sheila, and I'm a addict. And so when the feather came into my hand, and I said, hi, my name is Sheila, as soon as I said that, it was like my chest broke open, and I just sobbed. And at that moment, my great-grandmother, who I knew when I was a child, came to me, and I knew all these things. I was just bombarded with all of these memories and just stuff that I just knew. And when I go in a sweat lodge, still today, I start feeling like I'm moving like this, and I can hear this sound. I don't hear really language, but I hear this sound, and I believe my great-grandmother was transmitting knowledge to me. She was talking in her language, in Tsilkshan. That's our language. We need to do our best to remember, to bring our blood memory forward, because it's sitting in there. The knowledge is sitting in our blood, and we need to activate it. In many nations, we do fasting. And there's a reason for it. It's because it alters, it helps us to access parts of our brain that we don't usually access. And that does push a mind, a brain, into other states of being, like pushes us beyond our conscious state and the things we usually do and the parts of our brain we usually use. It actually activates other parts. That's what happens during these ceremonies that we have. We come through having a knowledge or an awareness that's beyond what people just have naturally. There were 6 of us that came together, and the elder guided us in building the sweat lodges and the moon lodge. So we got to talking about, well, what if I'm on my moon? I won't be able to go up the mountain. So one of the women was going to take birth control. One of them was going to do this. One of them was going to do that. I was still having my moon at that time. And I just kind of went deep inside myself and thought about how many things were controlled in my life, and that if I was going to go up and fast, I wanted it to be natural. So I went up without changing anything in my body. And just as I knew what would happen, that first night up, in the middle of the night, I came on my moon time. So when the elder came up, when we're fasting, the elder comes at sunrise and sunset. So when she came up at sunrise, I had to say, I'm on my moon. I came on my moon. So I had to go down the mountain. I was so angry after preparing for a whole year. And my 5 sisters, and you know, after spending a year together, how sometimes we'll get into little tensions with 1 or 2 of each other, like that's just how we are. And of course that was going on. I got in the river, remember I pushed my skirt up into my waist, and I'm grabbed the dishes, and I'm in the lake, and I'm washing these dishes, and I'm mad, and I'm like, this is, you know, well, this is what happens to me. Everything happens because I'm a woman, and I got this happened to me, and that abuse happened to me, and it's because I bleed, and now I can't even do this with all of my sisters because now I'm bleeding, and I don't want to be a woman, and blah, 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 blah. I was so mad because I couldn't be up there fasting, because to me, that was the most important thing, was to be up there fasting. And the elder seen me, she said, stop, what are you doing? You're on your moon. You don't do dishes. Go get in your shawl and sit and pray and rattle. I need your help. And if I hadn't seen what she did, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't be a moontime teacher today. I went and got on my skirt, I got on my shawl, and she would come to me because she'd go check on the other women up on the mountain. There was one who was an abundant woman, and she was worried that the woman was actually worried that she wouldn't get through it because it's 4 days of no food, and she had a food addiction. And I was asked to help her. And I didn't know how I could help her, except that I knew that she was in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and that she had spent a long time clean and sober. So I put that energy out to her, that you stopped using drugs and alcohol, and you can do this. And I just sent that message, just in my mind to her. Another woman was very, very slender. Elder came to me and said, we need to help her. She's crying. She's crying so much that I'm afraid she's going to be too dehydrated to stay up the mountain. Send her some special prayers. So, okay, what do I do? What I did, because I'm a very visual person, I took her head and I put it on my abundant friend's body. You're not going to run out of water. And I pictured her like that. And there was one more, I can't remember what that was. Anyway, when they came down on the 4th day, the one who was losing water because she was crying so much stopped at me and she said, what did you do? I peed 3 times on the 3rd day. What were you doing to me? And my other friend had no issue at all with food, craving, at all. She was able to stay up and do her fast. And had I not had that experience where I witnessed the elder channeling, she harnessed and channeled my power, the power that was coming through me from Grandmother Moon on my moon, and that power was directed to specific things. The other incident that happened that was just unbelievable, I would never believe it. If I heard it, I would go, oh yeah, that's a really cool story. We were across the border, and in the Okanagan, it's desert, so there's severe lightning storms that happen, and they can cause fires. So she came, the rangers, they were in the States, came and said, there is a storm coming, you have to get down the mountain, you can't be here. And the elder told him, we can't, we have women up there, they're fasting. And they struck a deal so that if the storm kept coming, we would go down, but we would wait. So she had me get my rattle. I had my shawl on my blanket. She was drumming. I was behind her rattling. She was drumming. There was a lake behind us. She turned. She's drumming. And the dark clouds were coming, and she just kept drumming, and I kept rattling. She kept drumming and singing, and I'm rattling. And literally, those clouds parted and went around the lake. The storm, the lightning did not touch the area that we were at. It literally, I watched clouds part. It was so unbelievable that she was able to channel that. So my experience of moontime power when I was supposed to be fasting, which was really important to me, I got to experience firsthand as a very real thing, not just a story. I experienced it. And what the elder said to me was that visions happen in all kinds of ways. That's what happens during a fast, or various other practices that we might get put through when we are being developed as medicine people, or if we are seen as gifts, that we have gifts that go beyond the regular senses, that quite naturally lots of us have that. It's known in the times before contact that our Two-Spirit people were born with those gifts, the ability to cross into other realms that aren't based in the actual physical, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can taste, which gives us access to portals and places As Indigenous people, we have that just naturally. You don't always have a vision of a great big eagle coming and landing and talking to you, or a great big beautiful white horse with a handsome human on it. The visions happen in the same way that they did. I came on my moon, so I was gifted with the moon time vision. On a moon, full moon, the waters and the tides change. They know that. Just as women's bodies, which is mostly water, we are guided by that moon and the power. We mostly, if we're not taking a birth control or some kind of thing that controls our moon, we will have our moon either on a full moon or a new moon. Babies are born, even in the wild, on a full moon or on a new moon. It's the power of the moon. Yeah, she has that power, that pull. So when that conduit is open, we have a direct connection. And just as we all know, we can become really emotional, tearful. It's our time to cleanse. It's our time to heal, to cry about the things that happened over the last month. Or just let it out. Grandmother Moon is supporting all of that water and all of that healing. And if we listen to our instincts, here's another one, PMS. What does that do? Well, when we're PMSing, now she's PMSing, we are irritable. And what does irritable do? Makes people back away, and we get left alone. And really, it's an instinct driving us to go and be alone. Because on the time of our moon is the time that we can fully engage in that connection with Grandmother Moon. So if we go away and be alone or be with other women, we can center our power and our connection with Grandmother Moon, harnessing it, cleansing, and kind of like recharging, like a battery. And so our instincts are telling us to do that. That's why we're irritable. It's not because bleeding does that to it. It's because our instincts are saying it's time to go into your retreat. It's time to go and connect with Grandmother Moon with no interruption. So when we held Moon Lodge, the women did not have to cook. They didn't have to look after their babies. Unless they were breastfeeding, we'd have babies come into the lodge. And the children would come and see their mom, but hopefully they had somebody who would provide care so that she could just be in there, cleansing and renewing her energy. We had a sacred fire outside of the lodge, so women would sit around it, we would sing, we would offer medicines into it. It wasn't a fire that you could throw garbage into. It was a sacred fire, just as sacred as the fire in the arbor for Sundance or in the center of a medicine wheel or whatever kind of 4-day ceremony that requires a sacred fire. The Moon Lodge fire was sacred as well. Elder women would come into the lodge at various times when they were available and give teachings. And the women who were on their time would listen to the teachings. Sometimes women could be crying a lot or be going through something, and medicine people, women, would come in and work on them or talk to them. They would exchange stories, and that's how it was before contact. Most nations would have some form of isolation tent or a teepee or a lodge. And so when women came on their moon, they would go to the lodge. And we'll just call it a lodge. It wasn't always a lodge. They would all go there. they would pray, they would sing, it would be their time out. They would bead, they would center intention and prayer. Let's say if the community needed to know where the buffalo were or where they should go for hunting, the women in all of their power would focus on that. And when they came out, and there might be a spokeswoman, they would go and tell the men, the hunter group, where the buffalo were or where the deer were. And that is how the community would follow. They would follow the guidance from the women gathered on their moon time. And the reason that women were able to do that was because when we have our moon, when we're having our moon, we have the veil. If there is a veil between us and creation, it's very thin. It's like we have a direct connection. It's like we left our phone on and Grandmother Moon's always on the other end. So there's a direct line of contact. Grandmother Moon is our power source. When we're in a moon lodge, we don't cook, we don't work. We are given that space to take that time to cleanse and renew. And so somebody had to do it. Somebody needed to take care of the people in the moon lodge. And that's where Two-Spirit people come in. Our Two-Spirit people also have the gifts of the powers that are unseen and unheard and unknowing. And that energy is very real. It's with all of us. It's part of the world. It's part of life. And people such as women who are cleared and who are working on their connection and their with Grandmother Moon, they're cleansing and they're re-energizing every month. And Two-Spirit people have that ability. They have that ability to be in that kind of power. It would be our Two-Spirit people who would look after the women in the moon lodge. They could come in and out of the moon lodge, whether they were a male body or a female bodied human. As Indigenous people, there is power, spirit power that we have access to. That's why when in the time of the old ones, it would be the elders, would be the grandparents that watched the children, and they would watch the children to see what their gifts are. Oh, this one, like, they'd know by watching him or her that that's going to be a hunter. Or this one here would naturally show that they're medicine people. They're picking medicines. They have this gift, so they'd be nurtured that way. They would also watch, and they would know when their child had the gift of medicines that are unseen, and they would nurture that. We were told and convinced through the Christians and through the thinking and through the colonizers that Two-Spirit or queer was wrong, was evil, and so we were shoved off to the side to the detriment of ourselves and also our tribes, our people. Look at what our people have lived through. And we're still here, and we're standing up. Our Two-Spirit people, there's a resurgence coming. It's happening. We are standing up. It's as women, we need to activate it by honoring our moon time and honoring that ritual, honoring ourselves. And then we will know more and understand more about what we're able to do. And if we were all doing that in all of our circles, all of those little circles will become like one big circle. And we can change the world. Women lead the healing. Women always have. Women gather and we talk. Women lead the healing. Where the women are, the children are. Where the women and the children are, the men eventually follow. Because they're lost without us. So we really do lead the healing, and we do have a power and the responsibility of changing things. And it is as simple as honoring that moon time, which we're being taught to hate so much. It's not a curse, it's a blessing. So we're in our time of blessings. To speak about the powers that we have access to. You know, a lot of people use the word power. It's scary because a lot of times power is equated with harms and pushing people down and doing harmful things. But power is not always like that. We can be in our power as women, and we can actually change the world. We can change the circumstances for our children. They have been changing, not fast enough, but things since I was a kid has changed. Like, we can talk about things now. We can say it out loud. We can tell we don't like what's going on here and you need to stop. And we need to keep combining. We need to keep unifying and combining and consolidating all of that power that we have access to. Grandmother Moon. Grandmother Moon power, the energy from the stars and from the moon, is very real. You can imagine it as like the transformers, those big round things on power poles. So if you imagine women, 6 of them, in a moon lodge, all centering their power, channeling that power from Grandmother Moon. It's just like a bank of transformers. That power, it's real. And energy is energy in any form. Energy never dies, it merely transforms. So that power that we have the ability to connect to is very real. We just need to believe it, and we need to think it. The idea of having a ritual helps us to be focused on it. And as you begin to practice and honor the time on your moon, more and more is going to come to you through your blood memory. It's there, it's in your blood. Some people ask, well, what if I'm through that time? What if I'm on my menopause, like I've done all my bleeding time and I don't bleed anymore? Well, you still connect with Grandmother Moon. She's still your power. She's still your power source. What if you don't plan on ever having a baby? That's okay. You don't need to. But she is your source of power. And when she's strongest is full moon and new moon. All of our gifts are inside of us. They're in our blood. They're in our cells. They're in our DNA. They are there. We merely need to activate them to remember them. You just know it. And that's because it's coming right out of your blood. Epigenetics. Science is acknowledging that we carry these memories, these ancestral memories. So our ancestors do walk with us. They really do. So the ritual is one of the things that I ended up doing is going in my room. So I would spend as much time as I could by myself in my room, not talking, not answering phones, not doing any work, just centering my power, talking to Grandmother Moon, because it's as simple as saying in your mind, hello, Grandmother Moon, it's Sheila. It's your granddaughter Sheila here. And just talk to her, just like you would a grandmother, and ask for things. Talk about what's hurting. Talk about the pain that you might have experienced through the month. You know, maybe you had your heart broken, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe you failed at a course. Just talk to her about it and cleanse it through. That is the power that we have as women, as life givers, as bodied people with the biology to create life. Create a moon bundle So this is something I brought in. I brought it in for myself, and I teach about it. Create a bundle, and it can be like, it might be a skirt, it might be a pair of moccasins, it might be a shawl, it might be a blanket, a smudge bowl, or a rattle, or a drum. Like, create a moon bundle so that when you go in your room on the full moon or new moon, even if you're not, if you're past your bleeding time, or you don't bleed for whatever reasons, create a bundle anyway and have the ritual, because it's about the ritual, and to set the intention, right, to follow it. So you have a drum that's just for your moon time. Have a rattle that's just for your moon time. A smudge bowl just for your moon time. Eagle feather just for your moon time. A shawl, whatever. It can be many things. It's individual to each person. But in my moon bundle is a rattle, is a shawl, is a skirt, and a abalone shell. And I do burn sage just because I like it around me. And a glass with, like, or a cup with water. That's what's in my moon bundle. So you can make it, personalize it, make it yours. So, okay, it's moon time. Go open your bundle and spend as much time as you can alone. Just do whatever you can do. Whatever you can. And all the little parts as you remember them. And each time you do, it'll open space for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But try it for 3 months to honor your moon time in some way, whatever fits into your life. Honor it in some way. And so yes, you can rattle and you can drum. Just make it your moon bundle. So you're not going to harm anything. That's the thing, using that word. We, as women, we're not going to do that. Just because we're in powerful place with Grandmother Moon, who's our grandmother. She's everybody's grandmother, and we're life givers. We are sacred, and we deserve to treat ourselves sacredly, and each other. And if we make practices of ritual, because ritual helps us to center and to stay focused on what our intention is, rather than on all kinds of things like what's on TV or what's on this TikTok, or I got to return this text and stuff like that. It keeps our intention centered. When we connect with Grandmother Moon, that power that we have access to opens up more and more and more. And we can just do it as a routine and regular practice, and it will expand and expand. You will remember more. You'll come to know more. You'll know things you weren't told, nobody taught you. If you all of a sudden know something, but you don't know how you know it, don't doubt it. It's because something came through from your memory, deep inside you. It was transmitted and it's there, and you activated it. It's simply by sitting in a circle of women. It's all it can take. Doing a smudge, listening to a drum, or playing a drum, or rattling. That's one of the ways to activate blood memory. Very, very simple. Very, very simple.
Hey na na, hey na, hey na ho. Hey na.